Season 3 of PS2 Tuesdays is here, and this time around every episode will be a full review, like the one for Okami HD that we ended Season 2 with. The first episode covers Final Fantasy X, with footage taken from the HD Remaster that was released together with X-2 in 2014. I will be covering the original PS2 version as well as the updates that were made to the PS3 version, as I have played both. Listen to my review. This may be our last chance. Final Fantasy X always was a fantastic looking game, even in its original PS2 incarnation way back in 2001. The world of Spira featured some extremely vivid colours with bright blue skies, clear seas and lush green plains. That's not to say the whole game was bright and breezy. Some of the early sections of the game take place in dark, spooky ruins, and there's also the infamous Thunder Plains about halfway through the game, which is in a state of constant storm. More on this place later. The character models are a noticeable step up from the PS1 Final Fantasy trilogy, being composed of many more polygons and having realistic proportions. Where the polygonal characters in Final Fantasy VII look downright ugly today, not to mention inconsistent, those of Final Fantasy X have aged gracefully, and thanks to the new HD Remaster stack up fairly well against modern PS3 releases. From Final Fantasy VII onwards, Squaresoft cleverly implemented FMV sequences with 3D rendered in real time, something which they really perfected with Final Fantasy X. Unfortunately, the PS2 originals had rather large black borders, which has been fixed in the re-release, making it the definitive version of the game to date. While there is a PS4 release planned, I doubt that the graphics will have been improved any further. I would expect this version to be based on the PS3 one. Taken by itself, the music of Final Fantasy X would have been worth a solid 9 out of 10. The series' long-term composer, Nobuo Uematsu, turns in some fantastic tunes, including the vocal track Soteki Deni, Isn't It Wonderful, the highly memorable Tazanakant featured in the background of this video, and even some death metal in the form of the end boss track Otherworld. Uematsu was joined by Masashi Hamauzu and Junya Nakano, whose tracks are arguably just as good. After the game was released, Uematsu followed the original creator of the Final Fantasy series, Hironobu Sakaguchi, to his new studio Mistwalker, where he wrote soundtracks for games such as Blue Dragon, Lost Odyssey and The Last Story. The music of the Final Fantasy series hasn't really suffered, however, due to Square-Enix hiring amazing talent like Hitoshi Sakamoto for future games. The music that was first featured in the PS2 version of Final Fantasy X still had a MIDI-like quality to it, similar to the PS1 entries, but of slightly higher quality. The HD Remaster has replaced this with new versions played on real instruments, which initially sounds quite jarring for those accustomed to the old sound, but with a little time you will get used to it. The track, Sprouting Movement in Green, is a particular highlight. Again, you can hear this track in the background of this review. I love the use of Asian instruments in this track. The thing that brings the score of this section down a notch is in the quality of the voice acting. While it's not terrible overall, and is also one of the earliest games to be fully voiced from beginning to end, there are certain parts that can be a little cringe-inducing to listen to. Those who have played the game before will probably know where I'm going with this. I'm thinking of Tidus and Yuna's painful laughter scene in particular, though I'm not entirely certain what accent the great John DiMaggio, Bender from Futurama, was going for, possibly Barbadian. I do think he does a great job as Waka overall. There's also a typically great and scene-stealing appearance from Dwight Schultz as the minor character Meiji. This is all backed up by a range of familiar sound effects, such as the chime when you activate a save point, the effects when you cast a cure spell or Fira, you get the idea. Most of the sounds haven't changed much from multiple games in the series, which is how it should be. It gives a nice sense of consistency, even though the worlds and stories change with each main entry in the series. I quite like the way that the story of Final Fantasy X is set up, taking place from the viewpoint of Tidus, who is transported from his familiar life in the city of Zanarkand to Spira after an encounter with a huge monster known as Sin. Initially desperate to get back, he crosses paths with Yuna, a summoner just about to set out on a long pilgrimage to the various temples to obtain powerful Aeons, summoned monsters, in an attempt to defeat Sin and bring about the calm, a long period of peace. As their journey continues, Tidus realises that things are not as simple as they seem, and he also starts to fall for Yuna. The main group of protagonists are a strong and likeable bunch in my opinion. I like Tidus because he's not a moody and selfish arsehole like Cloud and Squall were. Auron is just an all-round badass. Riku can be annoying at times, but is mostly amusing, and does have a kind side to her past all the silliness. Yuna is a quiet but determined female lead. The only member of the main party I don't really like much is Kamari, the Ronso, big blue cat type person. It just takes far too long for him to develop a personality, and he's not terribly useful in combat either. The weakest character of all though has got to be Seymour, the main villain of the game. I absolutely hate that simpering idiot, so I guess that means he's done his job. Compared to Sephiroth though, he lacks charisma and is also absent for a large chunk of the game. Sin though is a genius creation. You see it lay waste to several towns early in the game, as well as wipe out an entire army. It truly feels like a powerful force to be reckoned with, and really helps you feel invested in seeing Yuna's mission through to the bitter end. Things do take a few odd turns in the late game, which I'm not going to spoil here, but also detracts from the overall game for me a little bit. Aside from the main group and the villains, there's also a bunch of characters that you will cross paths with time and time again throughout your journey. I've already mentioned the scholar Michin, who is a highlight, but there's also the merchant Owaka, a trainee priestess of Yevon, Shalinda, and multiple other summoners who become friends or rivals to Yuna. All of these people help make Spira feel like a real place, despite 95% of the main plot being entirely linear in nature. It's not until you've nearly completed the game that you finally get access to an airship, can enjoy some of the optional activities. I'm going to start with the battle system, which I think is really strong in Final Fantasy X. It's fast and fluid, with you easily able to switch out party members by pressing the L1 button, as well as changing weapons and armour on the fly. If you're faced with a flying enemy that can't be hit by Tidus for example, you can just call in Waka to hit it with his Blitz Ball, or Lulu to zap it with a lightning spell. Great stuff. The levelling system in this game is also fairly unique, using a sphere grid, which is a network of nodes with different properties. All of your characters share the same overall grid, but start at different places within it, with the nearby nodes typically applying to a particular role, such as healing and buffing spells for a white mage, offensive spells for a black mage, etc. In place of experience points, you earn AP, and once you hit certain thresholds you get to move one node along the sphere grid. You also need various different types of sphere to plug into the different nodes, however, and these are most commonly dropped in battle. There are power spheres that are used to increase strength or maximum HP, mana spheres to increase your magic strength, MP pool or magic defense, speed spheres that increase your agility or evasion, ability spheres that unlock key spells or special moves, and more. Throughout the grid there are also locked nodes which can be unlocked if you have a key sphere of the same level. These are a bit trickier to come by and are either used to jump a character from one track to another, or unlock some of the most powerful abilities and spells in the game. If you don't really stop to farm for AP at any point, then you might find yourself a bit underpowered during the closing stages of the game. I would recommend taking the time to acquire certain important abilities before you get to certain sections of the game, or you may struggle to complete it. For example, I tried to make sure that my white mage, probably Yuna, has learned the level 2 healing spells by the end of the Mihen High Road, the level 3 spells before you get to Zanakan, and the holy spell before you get to the last set of bosses in the game. Going straight for the final boss as soon as you get there may also prove challenging. Instead, I would take the time to do some of the optional content to strengthen your party. Speaking of optional content, there is a ton of things to do outside of the main story, but none of it is all that important. You can get by with only one single game of Blitzball under your belt, without any of the extra Aeons that can be recruited, or without any of the celestial weapons. When I've completed the game previously, I didn't really bother with any of this stuff, but this time I decided to at least give it a go. All of the optional content is very time consuming though, and some of it just isn't worth the hassle in my opinion. For example, to obtain Lulu's celestial weapon, you have to successfully dodge 200 lightning bolts on the thunder plains without getting hit a single time. That will most likely drive you insane should you attempt it. Some of the other things like the Cactuar Village quest with Riku, or playing through a League of Blitzball is rather more enjoyable, but will take many hours to complete. It's entirely up to you whether you think it's worth the effort. The changes to the standard Final Fantasy battle system and the introduction of the sphere grid definitely helped to set Final Fantasy X apart from other games in the series, and I think they both work well. The sphere grid in particular offers the scope for you to just follow along with the predetermined roles for each of the characters, or you can break out and create characters that are a hybrid of different styles. There's even the option to use an expert sphere grid, something that I believe was only in the international edition of the game previously. When I reached the closing stages of the story, my timer was around the 40-hour mark. That does include a fair bit of time spent grinding for AP levels to ensure that I was strong enough to get past certain bosses. As RPGs go, that's not a terribly long time. Completionists who try to do everything there is to do in the game will easily push this over 100 hours though, as the side quests are very long and convoluted. I do have to wonder if the amount of work required is worth the rewards in some cases though. Final Fantasy X is a beloved entry in the series for good reason. It's a great game. Definitely up there with the best, but not the absolute best. That is 12 in my opinion, one which many people won't share, I'm sure. The HD Remaster definitely improves the experience. It's clear that Square-Enix have spent a lot of effort in improving the visuals and the music. Extra bits and bobs have been included on the disc as well, such as a short in-engine cutscene called Eternal Calm that bridges the gap between this game and its sequel, and some newly recorded dialogue from Tidus that plays over the credits for this remaster set. If you've never played Final Fantasy X before and you own a PS3, I can recommend this without hesitation. As for the sequel, I will be back with a review of that at the end of the season.